Hey guys, welcome to our week on feminist theories. We have a ton of different branches of feminism that we're going to go through this week. We've got a couple of preliminary lectures that we're going to use to contextualize those particular branches, and that'll happen first. So, in this one, I want to start out with our starting point for all of this, which is going to be Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And if you remember multiple weeks ago now, when we talked about Charlotte Perkins Gilman, we talked about her idea that if a culture is androcentric, if it is a sexist, biased in favor of males culture, there's reason to think that gender actually comes before culture, and that is going to kind of be our jumping off point for everything that we talk about this week. The idea that before we start talking about the different beliefs, the different norms that exist in society, before we think about people creating those things, what we have to think about is that there aren't people. There are men and there are women. And the culture is going to reflect men's interests and men's experiences, which means gender comes before everything else. Now, that's not the way that we're used to thinking about society, but most of the theorists that we have studied have been men, a lot of them, most of them, white men. So it makes sense that they would have thought, well, there is just a culture, and to the extent that we're going to be concerned about gender, that is going to be one of the components of culture. The feminist theorists are going to completely disagree with that. They're going to say our society is gendered first, everything else comes next. And to their point, it's not just gendered in the sense of difference, although at the beginning we're going to deal with some people, some different theories who just say, okay, so we'll start out with gender, men are this way, women are this way, or men are socialized to be this way, women are socialized to be a different way, and let's see what happens. Most of the theorists at the end of this week are going to talk about the fact that it isn't just difference, it is a superiority-inferiority perspective. Women in at least American society, and in most other societies, at least that I'm aware of, women do not have as much political power. Yes, women can vote, and vote in the same numbers or greater numbers than men do in our country, but they are still underrepresented in terms of leadership in government in our country. As I'm sure almost everybody who's taking this course would know, there is a wage gap, a gendered wage gap that women, and it doesn't exist in every single occupation. But if you look at baby girls who were born in the year 2000 or in the year 1990 or the year 1980, when you look at them in their career, if you look at them as a whole, they make a fraction, a large fraction, but still a fraction of what men make. So it's not that in every single occupation, it's the fact that our society creates a situation where if you are a woman, you are likely to make less money than a man. And then just in terms of our culture, women are defined in a primary way according to or by their appearance, which leads to women being less likely to be thought of in leadership positions, being less likely or more likely to be dismissed, have their arguments dismissed in a conversation. So in terms of politics, in terms of economy, and in terms of culture, at least in our society and in most others, women are in an inferior position. The perspective of that's going to be the sort of the foundational perspective for all of our theories this week. The last point I want to make is we're going to then look at society from the perspective of the subordinate majority. Women makes up slightly more than 50% of the population. But if you think about the fact that if we're looking from women's perspective, we're looking from the perspective of people who are in an inferior position. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to say, well, there are a whole bunch of other people who are in inferior positions as well. People of color, people with disabilities, people who are LGBTQ. And what we end up with is the idea that in terms of demographics, the people that we kind of think of as the generic person, which for most people, the default person that you think of, it, at least historically, has been a white male. And certainly that's the perspective that most of our white male sociologists have taken. Those people only amount to, white males only amount to 38% of the American population. And when you start factoring in disability, you start factoring in LGBTQ, that percentage keeps getting lower and lower. So while sociology generally thinks of how society is for individuals, this feminist perspective is going to say you can't think of it that way. It doesn't make sense, because when you think individuals, if the people who are theorizing are white males, they're thinking in terms of white males, and that is not the majority experience of society that people have. Okay, I think I have hit all the notes I want to hit for this intro video. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we are going to cover just sort of contextualizing feminist theory by looking at the waves of feminist thought that have happened over the course of the last 200-ish years. So I will see you in that video.